Hello and welcome to Compliance Briefs on Client Due Diligence with an emphasis in third-party reliance. This compliance brief explains the key rules and regulations around relying on third parties for client due diligence. The first section outlines what the law stipulates regarding third-party reliance and the obligations firms must meet. The second section highlights the limits on relying on third parties, including situations where such reliance is prohibited. The third section explains what makes a third party eligible for reliance, focusing on the type of entities and jurisdictions involved. The fourth section presents the steps that a firm must follow before accepting a third party, such as due diligence and internal approvals. The final section covers reliance on overseas branches or associated firms, and the conditions under which this is allowed. Under Article 67 of the AML law, obliged entities are allowed to rely on third parties for certain aspects of client due diligence. This includes identifying the client and verifying their identity, identifying the beneficial owner and taking reasonable measures to verify who that person is, and also assessing, and where appropriate, collecting information about the purpose and intended nature of the business relationship. It is important to note, however, that even when relying on a third party for these steps, the firm itself remains fully responsible for compliance. If there is a failure in meeting any AML obligations, the liability still falls on the firm. This is why third-party reliance must always be approached with caution, ensuring the third party is trustworthy, competent, and operating in line with legal requirements. ICPAC firms are strictly prohibited from relying on third parties that are established in high-risk third countries. These jurisdictions are considered to have significant deficiencies in their anti-money laundering frameworks. Additionally, it is important to clarify that a firm cannot rely on a third party to carry out ongoing monitoring of the business relationship. This includes the ongoing scrutiny of transactions that take place throughout the relationship. That responsibility must remain entirely with the firm. If you would like more detail on what constitutes a high-risk country, please refer to Part 4 of this series on client due diligence, where we cover that topic in depth. Let's now look at who qualifies as an eligible third party under the AML law. A firm may only rely on certain types of third parties, such as a credit institution or financial institution, an auditor, external accountant, or tax advisor, a trust or company service provider, an independent legal professional. However, it is not enough for a third party to simply fall into one of these categories. They must also be established in a jurisdiction that meets specific standards. The third party must operate either in the European Economic Area or in a third country that applies customer due diligence, CDD, and record-keeping measures that are consistent with the EU directive, is subject to supervision by a competent authority that enforces standards equivalent to those in the EU. These safeguards ensure that any third party being relied upon is operating under a robust regulatory framework and is capable of maintaining the required level of compliance. Before relying on a third party, the firm must ensure a few essential conditions are met. There must be an agreement in place, and all activities must comply with personal data protection law. The firm must assess the third party's AML systems and procedures to ensure they align with the AML law and the ICPAC directive. A separate file should be maintained for each third party, including the assessment report. It is also important to confirm that the third party will provide copies of original documentation without delay. Most importantly, no cooperation can begin without approval from the compliance officer. For more detailed guidance and a sample of third-party reliance assessment questionnaire, refer to Compliance Circular 2, 2024. ICPAC firms may also rely on an overseas branch or an associated firm within the same group, but only under specific conditions. The group must apply common client due diligence and record-keeping procedures, and these must be either in line with or stricter than the standards set by the EU Directive on Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing. It is essential that these procedures are not just on paper, but are effectively implemented in practice. Additionally, there must be group-level supervision carried out by a competent authority, either in the home member state or in a third country that provides adequate regulatory oversight. This ensures that Reliance within a group maintains the same level of compliance and accountability expected under the law. Additional resources on client due diligence are available on the ICPAC website. These include the guide Best Practices for AML/CFT Compliance, which provides an extensive list of due diligence measures a firm may undertake. This can be found on the ICPAC website under the Monitoring and Compliance tab, within the section Compliance Guides. In addition, ICPAC's Monitoring and Compliance team has compiled a set of frequently asked questions, FAQs, which can also be accessed under the Monitoring and Compliance tab, within the section FAQ. Part 6 will cover the source of funds and source of wealth. I hope you found this useful. For any queries, you may contact us at compliance@icpac.org.cy. Thank you and goodbye.